Welcome to the Further Reformation podcast. I'm joined again for the second time by my friend and brother, Case Brower. How are you today, brother?
Well, it's a nice and sunny day here in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Thank you for having me again, and I hope that we have a nice moment during this podcast together, and also together with Jim.
Yes, indeed. And on that note, we want to welcome Jim Enos for the first time to this podcast. Let me just give a brief introduction about our guest. Jim Enos is CEO of the Christian Heritage Party in Hamilton Mountain Electoral District Association and Ontario Council President for CHP Canada. Jim is also the spokesperson for CHP Canada regarding the current judicial review process, CHP Canada versus City of Hamilton, and the city's declining of a bus shelter ad in July 2023. And we're going to be discussing that in some detail. In 2016, Jim was the spokesperson for CHP Canada in a 2016 judicial review case, CHP versus City of Hamilton, when the city declined a bus shelter ad. In that case, the three judges ruled unanimously in favor of CHP Canada. This time, however, the three different judges ruled against CHP Canada, which has led to an application for appeal with Ontario Court of Appeal, which has been granted. So on that note, welcome to the podcast, Jim. And just for our listeners, why don't you tell us a little bit, what is the Christian Heritage Party of Canada, or CHP, and how long has this organization existed?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's it's very important to the case. We are a registered federal political party, which has great weight in our case regarding uh, uh, charter rights. And we were formed in 1987, so we're just completing 38 years as a registered federal party. So we were in the federal elections, running candidates, and so on. And our foundation is a biblical foundation. We're not progressive. We don't believe in progressing away from God's word, but adhering to it.
Praise God. And that is a rare voice in the Canadian landscape today, where we see so much departure from the truth of God. And I think many people, either Christians who've walked with the Lord many years or even new Christians, are searching for ways and means where they can take a stand for the Lord in these days. So I hope that this example will prove instructive to us as we think about aspects of our own responsibility as citizens of our country and also as Christian people. So why don't you take us a little bit into this case? What happened in 2016 first that led to CHP installing bus shelter ads which show the back of a male beginning to push open the door labeled "Lady Showers" with the caption, "Competing Human Rights, Where is Justice?" That's a pretty provocative message. So why don't you take us through that?
Yeah, so at the time, the city of Hamilton in 2016 was uh, looking into passing policy that would allow biological males to enter public intimate female facilities, washrooms, change rooms, and showers. And CHP Hamilton Mountain, well, we were opposed to that. And in addition to writing letters, we decided to post our position publicly on public property, being bus shelters, which we did do. And it actually got approved. It went through the ad agency, and the poster was put up in four bus shelters, key points around Hamilton. And then 3 days later, the city of Hamilton took the bus shelter ads down. Without talking to us, without any discussion, they simply removed them. We were contacted by a lawyer, Albertos Polizakopoulos. I really don't know how he heard about our case, but we got a call from him and he said, "You have to challenge this. You cannot let them do this. They've broken your charter rights for political free speech, and you must challenge it." And so we did.
Well,
Mhm.
I'm incredibly gratified in the first place, brother, that you took a stand on this, because I think that agendas as evil and as irrational as the transgender movement, they thrive on isolation. So if you are a citizen of Canada and you just assume that everyone is denying the plain facts of biology and basic decorum regarding different washrooms and so forth, if you just think you're the odd one out, then the social pressure to conform can be enormously powerful, sadly enough. But all it really takes is one voice to sound the alarm. And a lot of people will actually say, yeah, like that's obviously absurd, right?
Mhm.
But the fact that you encounter that kind of hostility, right? Like I use the term provocative, and really it just is common sense, right? It shouldn't be provocative, but apparently some people were depressing your rights to express the truth there, which is an
And if you think
incredible.
about it, we were actually provoked into taking action
Yeah, that's
because,
probably a much better way to say it.
yeah, I can't tolerate men going into the shower with my wife. I won't tolerate it. So tolerance has a limit, and that's one of them for sure. So we were really the ones that were provoked. And yet, really, if you look at the ad, it really wasn't saying anything. It was very interesting. I got to sit in on the cross examinations. The city had four witnesses that were cross-examined before the actual judicial review process. So, judicial review process, some people may not be aware of it. So, the story or the case goes before three judges in the Ontario Superior Court, and they make a decision based on the arguments and the cross examinations and so on. So during cross examination, uh, there was questioning, asking them why was the poster objectionable. So they had three people who identified as transgender, which is a self identification. Of course, I don't adhere to the idea of being transgendered. But there was three people who identified as transgendered, and they were asked, "So what in the poster is objectionable?" They said, "Like, is that a picture of a trans person?" They said, "No, it's not." All three of them said it was not a trans person, which is interesting how they could tell. How can you tell what a trans person is? I was kind of flabbergasted. They said, "Well, is there the word trans on the poster anywhere?" Well, no, there's not. Well, is it the wording? Is there something that suggests that trans people are being attacked by this ad? No, there wasn't. So none of them could actually say what was really wrong with the poster, and that became very evident in the courts. The court asked the city of Hamilton's lawyer if they could tell what was discriminatory, and he said, "Well, it just wasn't that easy to say." But here they were spending all the tax dollar payers' money to defend their action of taking it down.
Yeah, and of course, there's no hindrance on the part of the homosexual and transgender movement to plaster our whole province with their symbols and their propaganda. But the moment that one person stands against that in even the most modest and respectful way, suddenly it's the end of the world, right? Which shows that the the importance of exercising our right to dissent from this is all the more important, because totalitarian ideologies, they thrive on the complicity of the people in this, right? The moment that we stand up against it, then it can't really survive. But
Yeah,
Kate, the
and
one, yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. Sorry?
I was just gonna ask if Case said something else, but if you want to follow up with that, then I'll hand it over to Case to see if he wants to contribute to this discussion.
No, I think when we're looking at a 2016 case, all in all, it ended up in favor of CHP. And, after those things, you hope that, that the discussion comes to an end. Unfortunately, the discussion never came to an end, and I think it has only further progressed. And that eventually led to another situation when we're looking at 2023. Can you tell us a bit more about that one, Jim?
Well, the 2023 ad It's along the same line of discussion. If anything, I would suggest that the ad is much softer than the first one, and it has a picture of a conservatively dressed woman. Probably, I'm going to say she's probably in her early 30s, maybe. And the caption is "Woman, an adult female," and it was rejected. First of all, rejected by the ad agency. Then we appealed to the city, and the city appealed it in a July 2023 letter to us. Quite interesting to read maybe a couple of their objections. Would that be okay if I read a couple of the objections that were within the letter?
Yes, as you mentioned, the letter that you have sent us in preparation also for today. I was wondering to ask you in order what were some of the concerns that the city expresses about the ad, for instance.
Yeah. Well, right at the beginning, very early into the letter, it says at first glance, the advertisement, which presents a cisgendered woman with caption "woman," an adult female, states a simple definition that can be found in most dictionaries. That's one of their objections. It's hard to kind of wrap your head around that, I think. I mean, if we would have put up a dictionary page, would they take that down too?
That's an interesting question, though, if they would do so. And I think if you're looking at a greater scale, I wouldn't be surprised if one day it will.
Yeah.
But
Well, they went on to say, however, in the broader context of current social culture dialogues, this statement carries an exclusive undertone. It implicitly suggests that only those who are biologically born female can be considered women. Correct. That is our stance. Thanks for repeating it. Thereby excluding individuals such as transgender women who what? Identify as female. You see that? They didn't say who are females. They said who identify as female. So they admit in their own letter that they're a different category. They are not females. They are people who identify as females, but were not assigned this gender at birth. Well, the reason they weren't assigned the gender at birth is because it wasn't their gender.
Mm.
So I don't see here that there's very much of a leg to stand on. Then later, if I could, it says that the message of the advertisement supports her traditional and biologically determined definition of gender in line with conservative values. We can't have conservative values on our bus shelters.
no, which is kind of strange. In order, we acknowledge that our society does harbor quite a number of, let's say, opinions about things and stands about things. One of the reasons why we have different political parties, different associations, even within the church landscape, different churches, and we all acknowledge that. And in this case, that suddenly becomes a problem when your, how do you call it, when your position suddenly is not in line with the assumed normal, where the assumed normal can be, well, we can easily discuss that if that assumed normal really is so normal in our society. That's beside what I saw about the letter as well, Jim, and I don't know what your response is to that or your idea, is that the city of Hamilton put in a lot of work in the letter in order to explain how CHP was actually acting within the boundaries of its rights.
Yeah, they probably spent at least half of the 5 pages saying that you absolutely have the right and that we have absolutely no right to stop you. They acknowledged that because of their loss in the 2016 case. But then they went on and on and on about it, and they were absolutely right. Then they went into what they call balancing it. Say, well, you may have the right, but there is a balance. And the balance they suggest is from some academic literature. And in this academic literature, it's quite a long title to it. But first of all, you have to understand that academic literature was LGBT group funded. And then what it talks about the negative transgender related media message and how it affects the mental health of people who identify as transgender. So I asked the city for the full study rather than the short of it, and I went through it. And what's very apparent is it's not about having a disagreement on a term. The study is about when you have TV shows that makes people who identify as transgender to be villainous or to be violent or to be pedophiles. So, casting that kind of a light on them. But this isn't that. And that's our point. But what they do is they play the victim. And so then what happens is nobody can disagree with them because if you disagree with me, I might kill myself. Well, maybe we should make that stance about Christ, that the Christ is king and nobody should say he isn't or we're all going to kill ourselves. Like that's not a healthy society. And it's a very poor foundation for an argument, I think.
Yeah, it's a reasonably poor example of what I would see as moral blackmail on moralities that never were part of the discussion in the first place. Because as far as I am concerned, is that the concerned party in this, and especially the CSP, is not voicing any negativity about, let's say, transgender or LGBTQ people in general as villainous or whatsoever in those negative terms. That doesn't come to pass. And I think from a Christian perspective, the CHP and fellow Christians with biblical norms would look at these people from a, I think, healthy biblical concern perspective.
From empathy position, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
there's no desire anywhere to cause people to kill themselves, but at the same time, you can't use that sort of an argument to defend a lie.
No, I would love to see this discussion being continued based on objectivity and not based on the fluke of the feelings that go on in my belly and as gut feelings that.
Yeah, actually, you've made a good point because one of the arguments our lawyer made during the case was from one of the Supreme Court rulings. I don't have that one at my tips, but she said that the Supreme Court had written in this one case that uh, the important way to address tough topics is to have more discussion, not less. By shutting down discussion, you never resolve what's going on. That's like telling your kids when they reach teenagers, when they're able to rationalize more than when they were 3. Because I said no without any sort of reason why, they're going to harbor resentment if there can't be a discussion as they get older. And we're all adults here, and we should be able to have these discussions, especially if something. Look, this isn't like somebody sitting in their basement with a weird idea. This is forcing it on a public, forcing themselves into women's showers and change rooms. So it's very important to have a discussion. It's one of the prime reasons that we went for this. We didn't expect to have it taken down, honestly, because of our success in 2018. But the point of putting it out there was that, guess what? There's other ideas out there besides what we're being portrayed in the media. And we want to have a discussion. This discussion should never be closed on any subject. That's how marriage got redefined because they kept talking about it and talking about it, now it got redefined. Well, at CHP, we still don't recognize same-sex marriage. And, and we still want to talk about that as well.
Yeah. So if we're looking at the letter that CHP received from the city of Hamilton, which more or less gave a negative response on the request to place those advertisements, what was the direct response? Like, what is the process that is being followed by CHP ever since?
Okay, so we received that. Following that, you have 30 days to either accept their under the law, you have 30 days to either accept their ruling or to apply for what we call judicial review. And on speaking with the lawyer and with our national board, we said we have to go to a judicial review. We have to have judges rule this. So the point of a judicial review is to put a check on power of governments. So the Charter of Rights isn't there to protect government. It's there to protect people from government. And that's why it's established. And so we said, well, it's important that the city not have this kind of censoring power over a person, let alone a political party. And it's interesting you talked about how there's various political parties, but if you really look at them, they're really all the same, except for CHP. I mean, okay, there's a United Parties coming alongside us now in a very close stance for sure. Not to dismiss that. But the three main parties, tell me the difference from a moral position. I don't think there is one, especially when it comes to biblical standards.
Yeah, I think that's certainly true. You see, there's people arguing we should go off the cliff at 100 miles an hour, and those we should go off the cliff at 50 miles an hour and 25, kilometers per hour. But no one is denying that we should go off the cliff into the abyss of moral degeneracy, right? And until Christians begin to articulate a positive vision for our nation, then it's going to be, we're just going to be marching to the beat of someone else's drum, basically, and we're going to be carrying water for an agenda that is contrary to our own principles. So I think that's a very powerful point that you're making. And yeah, maybe just as a question about this whole judicial review process, what all has been the result of that, and how has that progressed?
Okay, so we had the judicial review, and it was only 2 weeks later after the review that we got a ruling. Before it was 6 months. This time it was 2 weeks, and the three judges came down against us unanimously, which is an exact flip of what happened. The 2016 case was ruled in 2018, so it's an exact flip of what happened in 2018. And when our lawyer looked at their review, their decision, there's nothing in there talking about the charter rights. There's nothing in there talking about our affidavits we had submitted showing how the city has taken a position on this subject and is doing certain, contrary ads, exact flip ads of what we're doing. They're going the exact opposite way. There was no discussion of that. There was no discussion of our 2018 case, which was a precedent-setting case. The judges just, when you watch their faces as our lawyer talked, they were rolling their eyes and just basically they're just waiting for the thing to end. So it was on a legal basis, it was a complete dud. There was no legal reference given to the ruling or at all. There's just their opinion that we agree. Well, the city did a pretty good job here. So what happened? Well, then having looked at that, our lawyer looked at it and said, this has to go to the Ontario Appeals Court. We have to make an appeal because if we don't, they will use this for a precedent. Even though our case should have been the precedent, now liberal courts will try to use this one as the precedent, as a sign of the times. And so, there was a lot of discussion at the board, and it's not a free ride. We've already put about $130,000 into this particular court case thus far, but we decided that it wasn't about the money. It's about right and wrong.
Yeah.
And we can't make it about the money. We have to make it about taking the stance. And so we did a pay for to do an application for an appeal, and appeals aren't automatic. So when Ontario appeals courts get an application, I don't know how it works exactly, but I believe there's judges that look at it and say, well, do they have a point here or do they not? So if the original case was really solid, they would say, we're not going to give the appeal. But they granted the appeal. So that's a sign to us that the appeals court sees a weakness in the original ruling, or we don't think it would grant the appeal in the first place. So we've successfully done that, and we filed a number of papers to go with that. And so now we're just waiting for the date when the appeal will happen. With the summer coming on, we're guessing it's probably not going to be before September, but we don't really know for sure, but probably not before September. But probably not long after September, we will be into the Ontario Appeals Court and restating our case.
Hmm. Well, these are just hearing some of the things you're saying, it really underlies what I have observed in recent years about the politicization of our judiciary.
Right.
And I think I know this is not a podcast about the COVID issues, but I think it is very striking that the churches that sought to stand principally on the issue of gathering for worship on the Lord's Day, even without the state's permission, were not even granted a hearing by the Supreme Court. And in another case, there was an issue of civil rights related to the whole COVID issues that was brought by one of the drafters of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, where his rights were infringed, and they would not even hear a case by the last surviving drafter of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms,
Yes.
arguing about his own intention in the document. And I think when you have that kind of blatant prejudice, where there are weighty matters of religious freedom, weighty matters of civil freedom, and you have the judiciary just kind of giving the backhand, this shows that our nation has not a due respect for justice anymore, right? And if there is a willingness on the part of the Ontario Court of Appeal to hear it, that is at least gratifying to me, because at least there is a hearing. Whether it goes more than that, I think we need to be praying for those judges to have great wisdom.
Yeah. Or conviction.
Yeah.
And, I was encouraged, though, to read this week that Linda Gibbons was acquitted.
Hmm.
That was a shockingly good surprise. Not guilty. So good things still happen, but I want to say that good things often don't happen to people that do nothing.
Yeah. It's a very good point. God bless his faithfulness in that sense, right? Case, did you want to chime in at this point?
Yeah, I had a question here. Again, it's about, let's say, all those judicial cases, court cases, and so on. There are voices around, Jim, that would debate on the point: is CHP the right party, the right instrument in order to do all these court cases? Doesn't it distract us from being actually a political party? How does it come that we're still involved in cases like this?
Yeah, well, that would probably come from people who are looking for a reason not to support CHP, so they would pull that one out of the hat. I've heard a lot of different ones. But as a political party, first of all, I don't like politics. I don't do any of this because I like politics. I can't stand it. It wears me out. I do it because of governance. And I think of political parties, there's a thing about getting elected, but if you're not going to get elected, at least have some impact on governance in one way or another. And, the governance of shutting down free speech is one of the key foundations of what we call democratic society, which is, the lesser of all evils of government, of course. But so I think this is a very important issue for some political party to get involved in. And guess what? We're the only party stepping forward. I don't have the conservatives asking to be interveners with us. They're not calling us, knocking on our door. I don't have any other party saying we'd like to intervene with you. So I think this is a wonderful thing for CHP to doing. Not elected yet, still impacting government policy. I think this is huge.
Yeah, I asked this same question during another discussion we had about 2 weeks ago to another gentleman on this topic, and he said, "Well, if CHP would not be active in this case, who will be?" And there was a question that I could not answer, even though you can come up with an awful lot of organizations that should be, from, let's say, my perspective, but eventually they are not. And that means if CHP would not be stepping up in a response to what is happening here in Hamilton, then nobody speaks up, and eventually we will be partakers of normalizing the situation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's not that we're trying to steal the spotlight from somebody else. It's nobody else in the spotlight vying for it. We're not looking for a spotlight anyway. The bottom line is we're a political party and we're addressing public policy. So what's wrong with that?
Yeah, and another comment that the same gentleman made. He says, there is so much done in the political realm. He says, but what we're doing now in the realm of the courts does have a significant political impact that nobody can ignore. So nobody has an excuse when there is a positive impact for, let's say, the values that we stand for within the courts.
Right. Yeah, it can't be overemphasized the importance of taking a stand. And the thing is, we didn't choose the courts. That's what we have to recognize. We only wanted to put up a very simple statement. The city chose the courts by breaking our charter rights. They chose the court fight, not us. The thing is, we didn't go looking for a fight, but when it's important, we don't intend to back down. If there's going to be a fight, we'll have it. But we didn't bring it on.
Yeah. Could you explain for some of the listeners who might be on the fence when it comes to this whole discussion about women's rights, like why should Christians be concerned in the first place about, let's say, the definition of a woman, that it isn't simply a personal view?
Yeah. Well, what's women's rights if we don't have any women? I mean, this is the cancel culture. It's cancel women, but it's cancel woman is just another phase of cancel Christian, cancel God. That's what's really going on. It's the cancel God culture that went to cancel everything, burn down churches. Governments don't even try to find out who did it, right? 200 and whatever number of churches burnt down now. The government has no interest in following up with these things going on. So it's really about cancel God, cancel the family, cancel anything that is about God. We're going to cancel it. And and as much as it's people, really we know it's about Satan versus God. This is a satanic movement. It's driven by Satan. People are pawns caught in the middle of it. And it's sad. It's sad to see all the people hurt. But from a worldly perspective for a moment, I mean, the world certainly reacted to that male boxer punching the woman in the face in the Olympics. Everybody knew that was fraud, and it wasn't just Christians complaining. But that was a huge deal, and certainly I would have to still believe that the majority of even pagans don't want men walking in on their wives in public showers. And so many things. And if I could just mention the fantastic ruling that came out in April of this year in the United Kingdom court, you may or may not be aware of it.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, there was a ladies group that challenged that sex gender is biological and a transgender woman's not a woman. And the UK court is considered very leftist. But they ruled in April 16, an 83-page ruling, and I went through a lot of it. They ruled that sex and gender is biological. There's only male and female. There are no other genders. There are no other sexes. And while they still recognize as people who have these transgender tendencies, and I'm not necessarily agreeing with them, I'm just saying what they've said, that transgender people do have certain rights. But this is the real key point. It doesn't cancel biological women. So the rights they said if we were to make the transgender rights the same as the women's rights, we would essentially be canceling many rights that those women have. One of them being into private intimacy in washrooms, changes, and showers. And so they ruled very clearly that there's only two genders, and this is a left-leaning court. So this is very encouraging of things going the right direction. That will be brought up in our upcoming case too of the ruling in the UK.
Yeah, I was quite surprised to read about it. It's just that you are able to put way more information in it than my knowledge went. When you're looking at the position of the British government being quite left, and you compare that to Canada, we would say that the British government would be more left so than the Canadian government. So what does this say about Canada?
Well, we're in a very bad situation, that's for sure. But one thing I would like to say is I'm very thankful that for that ladies group that took on the whole discussion and got into the courts with it. What if they didn't do that?
Well, I think just like yourself, it's encouraging that it was a ladies discussion group, not another male discussion group, but a ladies discussion group that basically stands up and says, enough is enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So uh we're we would love to have some more national women's groups who might want to consider being interveners in the case, specifically women's groups. We think that would be a credible team to come alongside us, CHP, specifically women's groups. And we are talking to some, but if there's others listening today and you're connected with an association where there's women, like a women's group within your association, out of let's say a national organization, contact us. Let's see if you can get some intervener status in this court case.
Yeah, the support on that end is very much needed. Like it starts not necessarily with the financials and or being another group stepping up, how welcome it all is, but just consider it in your prayer life. Bring it before the throne of God, and yeah, I don't want to say step away from it there, but who else can we better be on our side than God Himself? So that starts with prayer, and we can always call the people to remember CHP in this case in prayer. Jim, if you're looking at all the efforts that are going into this case, looking at all legal stuff, legal expenses and whatsoever, that cost an arm and a leg. What would be the result if, for instance, the CHP would lose this case?
Well, we're probably going to be from the beginning of this case to the finishing of the appeals court. We're going to be close to about $175,000 in that range. And if we lose, we'll also have to pay a percentage of costs of the city's lawyers. In the Hamilton case, we had to pay $35,000 towards their fees. We'd expect to see that again. So we could easily be over $200,000 in cost on this case.
Yeah, that's we're not talking about peanuts here, no. So so far in the process, like how much has it cost already so far? Like you mentioned the number left or
Well,
right,
I
but
think we're in around the one. I think we're in around the 150 to 160 mark. We just
yeah,
got some bills in yesterday, so I think it's brought it pretty close to 150, 160.
yeah. Well, that's quite a bit. So if people would like to support you in this case, what are all the ways that they can do it? You mentioned already like women's groups that would be considering to be an intervener in this case. But what else? What else can be done?
Well, financially, the good news is we are a registered political party. So people who make donations to a registered federal political party get a political income tax credit. So someone who's, for instance, who's still paying income tax, pretty much everyone is these days, I think. The first $400 that they were given a year, $300 comes back to them. So it only for in that situation, it only costs $100 to give 400, and that's a great incentive, I think. If you think about it, we're able to fight this legal battle for 25 cents on the dollar. And that's the advantage of having, that's one of the advantages of having a political party that aligns with your worldview, is that you can take on issues of the world and do it together. Group together and pool your funds and do it for 25 cents on the dollar. So we really would welcome donations. They have to be from individuals. They can't be from a business. They can't be from a church organization. It has to be individual donations, and they have to be Canadian citizens to make those donations. And they can contribute very easily online if they go to chp.ca/gender. Type that in, it'll take you right to the page. It'll give you a little bit of background on our why we're there and the importance of it, and there'll be opportunities there. It'll describe different ways you can donate: credit card, check, uh, e-transfer. It's all there at chp.ca/gender.
Yeah, I just pulled it up and I see right away a picture coming up with the definition that has been questioned here: woman, an adult female, and that basically represents the ad that you were intending to put on the bus shelter, I suppose.
Yeah, that's the ad that everybody got so upset about.
Yeah,
I think it's quite attractive, honestly.
yeah, I see no problem with it, but you know what? I think we share the same values on that end. And Benjamin, uh, what would you like to ask on it?
Well, the thing that comes to mind, brothers, is the words of our Lord Jesus Christ in John 14, where he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. So that is our hope, that anyone may come unto the Lord Jesus Christ to receive life and forgiveness as he offers himself in the gospel. And he alone is the Savior who can give the salvation from sin. But I don't think we should lose the fact that his name is truth. So we worship a Savior whose name is truth. And therefore, if we worship truth, then we must also be people of the truth. And that means certainly not lying about plain facts of biology, even if people's feelings are hurt, but that rather speaking the truth in love, we would call people out of this dark ideology and tell them, even if you are someone who have sinned against God by rejecting your God-given gender and sexuality, you also can receive forgiveness and you also can receive life. And the Lord Jesus would be glad to receive you. And so on that note, I want to thank you, Jim, for joining us today. How can people learn more about the CHP Canada?
Well, you could just go to chp.ca. It is probably the easiest way, and that'll take you to the front page of our website. And then within there, you'll find all sorts of information and videos and communiques. And we'd love to see you join as a member. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah. Can I put in just one more question? And Jim, you already uh, spoke about it just on a short notice. But in these cases, whatever, often you hear, well, there we have those Christians again. They got worked up on something and now they need to get their voice heard. But just for the non-Christians under us that would listen to this podcast, what do they have to lose when they would let this go?
Yeah. They would lose an argument, I suppose, but I don't see anything else other than that.
Yeah. And that's basically coming back to the whole thing on women's rights. Like, do we really speak about women's rights when we allow this transgender agenda to proceed?
Yeah. You know what? Actually, I'm going to go a little further. For the activists, what they would lose is control.
Yeah.
That's really very key. Controlling the language, controlling the school systems, controlling the media. Losing this argument would be losing control.
Yeah. And so when we're looking at Canadian women in general, what would they lose if our opposition would get their will done?
Well, they're going to continue to be dismissed as women. And the assault on children's sexuality is probably my primary concern. I've been very heavily involved in sex education and fighting the agenda for 30 years. And sex is a wonderful thing within the right boundaries. But outside of those boundaries, what a mess and what a horror. And then when we put it on the kids, and with Bill C-4, you can't even, as a parent in a church, you can't even defend your own children. They want to take you to jail.
Oh yeah, I think that that discussion in itself would already justify a whole new podcast on that one. Yeah.
But it's on the same topic, right down the same trail.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're quite related. So if we're looking at the time that we spent so far, is when we're looking a bit at the judicial case in 2016, and how we eventually ended up at the point where we're now, at the total differences between the two cases and the similarities in the two cases. So, and then the situation that CHP is facing now, that where they were given, victory is a big word, but at least when their right was acknowledged in 2016, it's absolutely trampled on in 2023, 2024 in proceeding as we go at the moment. And it's not necessarily the rights of CHP, but we're looking at women's rights in general. And at the end of the day, as Christians, we can say the glory of God and the honor of God in the dismissal of his creation, which is a very concerning point. You mentioned the desire to have more women and women's organization on board with this, and they can definitely contact, I think, the party through chp.ca and whatever contact opportunities are being given there. But for those who put value to this case and have a heart for this case, you have invited them in order to show financial support there where they have the ability. Is there any maximum on that can be given?
Yeah, so there are, for those who are flowing in cash, the maximum you can give to a national federal party in 1 year is $1,750. But there are other ways that you could do that twice. You could do it once to national, and then you could do another $1,750 to a registered uh, uh, electoral district association, like Hamilton Mountain. We're electoral district association. So there, you could theoretically do, and legally, totally legally, $3,500 per person, 1,750 each way. And then as a couple, I mean, if you really have cash, you could do $7,000. You could do 3,500 to national and 3,500 to a local riding association of CHP.
Well, that would be quite helpful. And you've given the link that people can go to visit. It's I repeat, it would be www.chp.ca/gender, and it will give you way more information on this case and gives you the opportunity to donate to it. Do you have any further comments, Jim, that you would like to share with the listeners?
Well, Just really glad that anybody would take the time to listen and think about it and really pray about that and ask yourselves, I think, the question, if Christians don't stand up on this very important issue, who will do it?
Yeah. No, and that's a great question there. Benjamin, anything to add on your side?
Said all that I can think of, brother. I'm very thankful to Jim and yourself for taking the time today, and thank you to our listeners as well. Until next time, God bless.